from Greenville, presented by the Greenville Historical Society. We will be showing a series of postcards with views of Greenville. In so doing, we hope to be able to share some of our town's history. This bird's-eye view of part of Greenville is taken from Dunster Hill. Note that the hill is cleared pasture at the time the picture is taken. The date of the picture is sometime after 1905. The way we determine the date is by using the dates of construction of various buildings. From left to right, you can see the public school building built in 1904. Vaguely in the center, you see the old public school, which had been moved to Adams Street, just south of the ball field in 1904. The next building of note is the Catholic Church, and just to the right of it is the parochial school, which was built in 1905. Most people arriving in Greenville in the late 1800s and early 1900s came by train. This is the railroad bridge built by the Peterborough and Shirley Railroad in 1851. For years, this was considered the highest railroad bridge in New Hampshire. It burned December 7th, 1907. This is a picture taken of the new railroad bridge from the west side of the river. Note the workers on the side of the bridge at the right-hand side of the picture. How many of our viewers remember walking over the trestle and being petrified when looking down at the river and afraid that if a train came, you'd never reach one of those red overhangs placed at various locations along the edge of the bridge? This picture is a fun picture as it raises many questions. Note at the right-hand side of the picture the sign at the railroad station. It says, Greenville. Who are the four men? We assume that they must be the engineer, fireman, conductor, and station master. If you are a railroad buff, this is a good picture, as the engine number shows on the postcard and allows you to determine when and where the engine was manufactured. The railroad at this time was being operated by the Fitchburg Railroad Company. The picture gives the date as June 23, 1908, which indicates that it took only 7 months to rebuild the railroad bridge. The final question on this card is the notation at the bottom, published by Greenwood's 5 and 10 cent store. Where was this store? In this picture of the railroad station, note the Columbian Manufacturing Company's storehouse in the background. The picture was taken on a cold day. How can you tell that it was a cold day? If you look closely, you will note that there is a blanket on the horse. This next group of pictures is of various parades. This picture of a Legion float was taken after World War I and before World War II. Note the depot, the sign on the depot, which says Greenville, and note the mill storehouse in the rear on the right-hand side of the picture. This is a picture taken of the July 4th, 1910 parade. It was given to Elsie Wheeler by Hattie Tenney French. The Tenneys lived at the Mansfield Barry Farm on the back road to New Ipswich. The Tenney children went to school in Greenville. Hattie writes, I have a postcard picture of a parade in Greenville taken in front of Sawyer's Hotel. I was driving the horses, Fred Kimball's, in the WCTU float. Mrs. Lucy Cushing and several children were in it. We're singing, We'll Make the Map All White. I think we got second or third prize. The WCTU was the Women's Christian Temperance Union. They advocated prohibition, and Greenville, being a wet town, was not alone in dealing with the social issues of the day. It was the intention of the WCTU to have each state adopt prohibition. The song, We'll Make the Map All White, was their theme song. This picture is taken on East Main Street. Who are the marchers? Are they the Red Cross? Note the insignia on their headpieces. Also, note the porch railings. Each building has a different design for its porch railings. The central figure in this float is Miss Harriet Morris. Miss Morris was the mill nurse. Before the days of visiting nurses, the Columbian Manufacturing Company in Greenville had its own HMO for its employees. This is a picture of the IOOF float. The IOOF were the Oddfellows, a fraternal organization. Greenville had many such clubs and organizations. Who are these marchers? I suspect they are Greenville veterans of World War I. Does anyone have a marked postcard identifying the marchers or the people along the side? After World War I, a monument was placed across from the town hall. You can see the hotel in the background on the left and the present Fournier Funeral Home building in the rear to the right. The honor roll tablet was removed to the Myrtle Marsh Park after World War II. This picture shows the town hall and also the reverse side of the World War I war monument. The picture is taken prior to 1945 and after 1936. Note the library and post office signs. Also, note the mailbox to the right of the post office steps. Parking cars in front of the library and along the Taft's fence was a common practice. This picture is of the Mason Village Savings Bank in 1920. It's interesting as one would hardly recognize it as the core of the present bank building. Prior to 1920, the bank operated next to the post office in the town hall. Miss Myrtle Marsh was the treasurer of the bank and postmistress. This is Pleasant Street, looking south from the middle of the street between the Livingston-Vauden House and the Federated Church Parsonage. Note how the trees enhance the beauty of the street. This picture of the town and the number 1 mill pond is easy to date. From left to right, note the number 4 mill tower, the Congregational Church steeple, the Baptist Church steeple, and the public school. In the foreground are the mill shops and barn and the ice houses. The schoolhouse was built in 1904 and the Congregational Church burned in 1919, so the picture was taken sometime between 1905 and 1919. This picture was misprinted as Greenville, New York. It is not. It's Greenville, New Hampshire. The old sawmill was the Chamberlain sawmill on the Wilton Road, just to the south of the present Green Bridge. The bridge went across the dam and was referred to as the Sawmill Bridge. It was at the time the only bridge across the Souhegan River in Greenville which was not a stone arch bridge. Both the Main Street Bridge and the Mill Street bridges were stone arch bridges. Highland Farmhouse is the Batchelder Tolman farm on Adams Hill. It was operated for many years by Charles and Margaret Batchelder as a summer boarding house for families from the city who came to the countryside for a vacation. From these porches at Highland Farm, one had a panoramic view across the Souhegan River Valley to the mountains on the west. The birches were in the pasture below Highland Farm, near the present residence of Betty Tolman. Parting of the ways is at the intersection of the Wilton Road and Adams Hill Road. Note the signpost and the laurel. The Wilton Road was always noted for its beautiful displays of laurel. If you have pictures or postcards of Greenville and want to share them, please contact a member of the Greenville Historical Society. We meet periodically throughout the year and are actively recording and preserving items and information regarding Greenville's past. Membership in the Historical Society is open to all. We hope to see you there, or as many of us have written on postcards, wish you were here. Greetings from Greenville and welcome to part 2 of Postcard View from Greenville, prepared and presented by the Greenville Historical Society. The pictures in this segment of A Postcard View from Greenville are from the private collection of Joni McPhee. Set of postcards, we start at the Arch Bridge on the Wilton Road. This bridge was 1/4 of a mile north of the town line in Wilton. The bridge was built by one of the Nuttings sometime between 1838 and 1843. The Wilton Road was laid out in 1838 and work was completed in 1843. This bridge was removed by the state in 1952. The parting of the ways is at the intersection of Adams Hill Road and the Wilton Road. To the left is the Wilton Road going towards the Arch Bridge. The road on the right, with the horse and buggy, is Adams Hill Road, just below the railroad crossing. The High Falls are the first set of waterfalls on the Souhegan River as you proceed upstream from the Greenville-Wilton town line. For many years, this was a favorite spot for picnics. A dam was placed here by the Greenville Electric Lighting Company, and for many years, electricity was generated at this site. The dam has since been removed. This postcard shows an inbound train to Greenville. It also gives the height and the length of the railroad bridge. The Wilton Road passes on the left side of the picture between the stone abutment and the first of the 3 stone piers. The next dam site on the Souhegan River was at the Chamberlain Sawmill. In this picture, the sawmill is at the right. Across the bridge, next to the road, are sheds which were near the present access road to the Greenville wastewater treatment plant. To the left of the sheds is the red barn. This barn was still standing in the 1960s. In the background is Dunster Hill, which at the time this picture was taken is still cleared pasture. This is the bridge and dam at the Chamberlain Sawmill. In many old town reports, it is referred to as the Sawmill Bridge. The bridge pictured here was built in 1895. It was destroyed by the flood in March of 1936. The present Green Bridge is to the north of the Sawmill Bridge. This is looking downstream from the bridge with the sawmill on the right. Because of the angle of the picture and the trees in the background, you cannot see the railroad bridge. The lower falls are next to the Chamberlain Mill on Mill Street. Above the dam, you can see the Mill Street Bridge, or the number 6 stone arch bridge, which is still standing and in use today. You can also see the edge of the number 6 mill in the top center of this picture. This picture of the Chamberlain Mill shows the mill, which was built in 1857 as a grist or flouring mill and has had many uses since. The hill history of Mason speaks of it as follows. The buildings are of brick constructed in the most substantial manner with window and door sills and caps of granite, and in all respects as nearly fireproof as buildings of that kind can be made. It's interesting to note that the building has since had a fire in it. The bridge shown in the picture is a substantial structure of granite. The length is 168 feet and the height from the riverbed to the top of the wall, 36 feet. The span of the arch is 37 feet, the arch being a half circle. The expense was about $4,600 paid by the town. It is a fine piece of masonry, a noble structure as lasting as time. It's also interesting to note in this picture how little forest there is on Adams Hill, which is on the right in the rear of the photo. Also, if you look, you can see Dunster Hill behind the chimney, and that is still cleared. The chair shop is the Chamberlain Mill. Much fine furniture was made here. James L. Chamberlain was a manufacturer of black walnut and chestnut and ash chamber sets, black walnut and ash extension tables and sideboards, walnut center tables, and black walnut and oak chairs and bookcases. The Allen Chair Company and the Blanchard and Gould Chair Company also used the building at various times. Pieces of furniture made here can still be found in the Greenville area. The number 6 mill of the Columbian Manufacturing Company was built in 1872. This is a more recent picture of the number 6 mill dam taken from the bridge on Mill Street, with the number 4 mill in the background. Note the smokestack at the number 4 mill, which has since been removed. This picture is looking upstream from the Main Street Bridge, with the number 1 mill building on the right-hand side of the picture. Note the ice houses along River Street in the center of the picture. The Upper Falls is where the number 1 mill dam is. The number 1 mill is shown with the Cowett House behind it. The number 1 mill was built in 1829 and is the oldest of the mill buildings in Greenville. This picture of the number 1 mill from above the dam shows the number 1 mill, the old town hall, the Chamberlain Mill chimney, Dr. Hall's drugstore, the edge of the Govan tenement block, and the roof line of the number 4 mill. This picture of the number 1 mill pond gives a better perspective of its size. This is upstream on the north side of the mill pond. The houses are on High Street, near the New Ipswich town line. This picture is fun because it raises more questions than it answers. Where is this on River Street? Is the river on the right-hand side of the photo, or is it on the left-hand side? Note the guardrail on the right. Could this be near Riverside Park? The next segment of pictures shows sites along Main Street. The Columbian Hotel is what many of us know as Bernier's. The building was lowered in the 1960s from 2 stories to 1. The barn to the right of the building was a livery stable. This is Main Street looking south from Dunster Hill Road. The second telephone pole has an early electric street light. In 1898, the first of electric street lights were used in Greenville. Who are the people in the middle of Main Street? Note the awnings on the Hatson Burke block. If you look closely, you will see in the picture Greenville's second bandstand. It is between the flagpole and the telephone pole, about 1/3 of the way into the picture from the left. The bandstand was put up shortly after 1903 by Charles Hartson and Charles Sawyer, proprietor of the Columbian Hotel and Livery Stable. Bi-weekly band concerts by the Greenville Band helped draw business to that end of town. The bandstand was later removed to the Mansfield farm on the back road to New Ipswich. Who says there isn't much in a picture? This is Main Street looking north from the town hall. Note the trees. Also, note the picket fence on the left-hand side of Main Street. If you look closely at the fence along the Chamberlain Taft property, you will see that it is the same fence that is there today. This picture shows the Columbian office and Main Street from what is called Post Office Square. The post office was located in the town hall, which would be to the right of this picture. From right to left, note the following. There is a porch on the Chamberlain Taft house. Note the street lamp just to the right of the elm tree. If you look on the left-hand side of Main Street, you will see the gooseneck streetlights. If you look closely, you'll see the water trough, which was at the foot of High Street at the intersection of Main Street. Where did this go? And if you look, you will also note that there are 3 telephone poles next to the elm tree. Also, note the fence that runs along the Columbian office building from Main Street to Temple Street. Fountain Square is just below the present Myrtle Marsh Park. Note the sidewalks on the old Main Street bridge. There's one on each side. Also, note the fence that runs along Main Street from the mill. Greenville had 2 bandstands. This bandstand is in what is now the Myrtle Marsh Park. It was built by the Columbian Manufacturing Company. The Columbian Manufacturing Company sponsored band concerts throughout the summer. This is East Main Street in Greenville. On the left-hand side of the picture, you see the Congregational Church, which has since burned and is replaced by the Blanchette House. Bourgeois store, which burned and is now the site of the bank, and then the Barrett House. On the right-hand side of the street, running from right to left, you will see the old bargain box, the shop which at one time housed a dentist, Lavery's, which is now Lazat's, the Elliott House, and then Dr. Pease's house in the background. Note the hitching posts along the sidewalk and the early street light. This is South Main Street in Greenville, which is just East Main Street from a different angle. If you look along the left-hand side of the picture, you will see the Mansfield DeRozier House, the tenements, the Congregational Church, Bourgeois store, and the Barrett House. There is a water trough, which is shown in this picture, behind the elm tree at the junction of Pleasant Street and Main Street. It is the same style as the one shown earlier in this collection at the intersection of Main and Temple Streets. Also, if you look closely, next to the watering trough is a fire hydrant. The Mason Village Baptist Church, now the Federated Church, building was built in 1827. It is today the oldest standing church building in the area. The present churches in Mason, Temple, and New Ipswich were built after this one. It retains most of its original features. This is the Sacred Heart Church, which was built in 1888. Note the designs and style of the front door. Also, note the side entrance to the basement. This picture of the Sacred Heart Church with the school behind it shows a few features. The school was built in 1905. It was taken down in 1986. The posts along the street appear to be hitching posts. This picture of the Catholic Church is more recent than the 2 previous pictures. If you look closely, you will note that this one shows the belfry without the railing around it. This picture shows the convent, which was occupied from 1905 until 1968 by Les Sœurs de l'Assomption de la Sainte Vierge, which was the teaching order at the Sacred Heart School. The building is now privately owned. This picture shows the gravestone of Father Godin, who served as pastor of the Sacred Heart Church from 1913 until his death in 1919. The inscription on the stone is in Latin. The new public school was built in 1904, and it was taken down in 1985 and replaced by the present new elementary school. This is a picture of the Columbian Hotel on Main Street, which is the present Bernier's. Note the sign on the building. In the earlier portion of this series, we used this picture from Dunster Hill and dated the picture from the dates of the buildings. The next picture that we will see is taken from Dunster Hill as well. This picture is from Dunster Hill and is called at the time of the picture Reservoir Hill. A reservoir was located on the top of Dunster Hill. It is still there today, although unused. From right to left, you can see the Sacred Heart School, the Sacred Heart Church, the public school, the number 4 Mill Belfry, the Congregational Church steeple, the number 6 Mill, the Baptist Church steeple, which is now the Federated Church. Barrett Hill is in the background. This is along the Souhegan at or near Riverside Park. Note the swimming attire or lack thereof. This picture concludes this portion of the series of postcards of Greenville. If you have pictures or postcards of Greenville and want to share them, please contact a member of the Greenville Historical Society. We meet periodically throughout the year and are actively recording and preserving items and information regarding Greenville's past. Most of the postcards in this segment are from Richard Eaton's collection. This is a popular picture of the high falls on the Souhegan River. In the lower left corner of the postcard, it says, 1894, Dr. C.E. Hall, publisher. Dr. Hall ran the drugstore for many years and lived in the present Fournier Funeral Home building. This picture of the high falls shows 5 unidentified men on the west bank of the Souhegan. Note how steep the rock is behind them. This postcard of the Chamberlain Sawmill shows Dunster Hill in the background. The card is interesting as it shows 3 buildings, the sawmill on the right-hand side, the barn and sheds in the center on the left of the road. The Chamberlain sawmill was built in the 1840s and was probably built at the same time that the Columbian Manufacturing Company bought the old Dakin mills and built the number 4 mill building. The Dakin mill had been a sawmill and a grist mill. The dam and iron bridge is on the Wilton Road at the Chamberlain sawmill. The bridge is often called the Sawmill Bridge. The one shown here was built in 1895 and destroyed by the flood on March 12, 1936. The present Green Bridge is to the north of the Sawmill Bridge. The lower falls are next to the Chamberlain Mill on Mill Street. Above the dam, just to the left, you can see the stone arch of the number 6 bridge, or the Mill Street Bridge. This postcard shows the dam at the number 6 mill with the number 4 mill in the background. Note the smokestack in the rear. The dam site is now, in 1996, used for the generation of electricity. The upper falls is at the number 1 mill. It too is used in 1996 for the generation of electrical energy. The swimming hole on the Souhegan River is actually in New Ipswich. The town of Greenville was given the stretch of land between River Street and the river just beyond the town line for a park. It is called Riverside Park. In the background is the Mansfield-Tenney-Barry farm on the back road to New Ipswich. The next three postcards show the stone arch bridges across the river. This is the Main Street Bridge. The bridge had sidewalks on both sides with wooden fences on both sides of each sidewalk. This picture of the Chamberlain or Number 6 or Mill Street Bridge shows the massive stonework for the bridge. Note the wooden fences on each side of the bridge. The arch bridge on the Wilton Road, while not in Greenville, was often listed on pictures as being in Greenville. This postcard is dated 1893, C.E. Hall, publisher. The bridge was built sometime between 1838 and 1843 and removed by the state in 1952. The Wilton Road had sharp curves just before the bridge. Today, the site is a popular location for kayakers and canoeists to start their run down the river. Also, note how this bridge has only a fence along it. This picture of the Sacred Heart Church and School was taken between 1905, when the school was built, and 1910, when construction of the second rectory began. The first rectory was located on the site of the present church parking lot. This postcard of the Sacred Heart Church is harder to date. It appears to be an earlier view, as there are no light lines in the picture and no school in the background. For many of us, this is what we remember as the Sacred Heart Church, rectory, and garage. The rectory is the second one. When this one was built, the first rectory was rented out and ultimately torn down. The garage has since been removed as well. This postcard of the church can be dated if you know three things. When were the handrails installed? When was the belfry railing removed? And when was the statue placed between the church and the rectory? The convent was a gift to the church from John and Ellen Foley. The church history states the convent was originally two buildings. The convent was the larger of the two buildings, and the smaller being the residence of the Foleys. After the demise of the last Foley in 1919, the parish connected the two buildings and converted the downstairs of the smaller building into a chapel for the sisters. The Federated Church building was originally the Mason Village Baptist Meeting House, built in 1827. Note in this picture the weather vane. This is a picture of the public school taken after 1949 and before 1985, when the school was torn down. This picture is captioned, "Highest Bridge in New England, Greenville, New Hampshire." It was a popular card and one of pride for local residents. This picture is of the old bridge, which was built in 1851 and burned December 7th, 1907. This is a picture of an inbound train. Can you make out the numbers on the coal car? This picture is taken from a slightly different angle with the notation, Railroad Bridge, highest in the state, 626 feet long, 105 feet high, Greenville, New Hampshire. On December 7th, 1907, the wooden railroad bridge burned. After discovering the fire, they were able to flag the inbound train and stop it at the railroad crossing on Adams Hill. The new railroad bridge was built in 7 months, with service restored to the depot on June 23, 1908. During the construction period, passengers and freight were transported by carriage and wagon from the depot to the railroad crossing at Adams Hill Road, which was called Jimmyville. In this picture of the depot, note the roof of the barn in the upper right-hand corner, the carriages, the people at the station, the man on the engine, the mill warehouse. Is that a water tank to the rear of the train in the distance? This is another picture of the depot with the postmark 1909 on it. Note the Columbian warehouse behind the depot. Also, in the bottom left is one rail, which is part of the siding for the grain store. Greenville had more than one hotel. This is the Columbian Hotel. Note that the picture is taken after the advent of telephone and electricity. The telephone pole is painted in 2 colors. Earlier we saw a postcard with the same scene and noted the awnings on the Hartson-Burke block, people on the street lights, and the bandstand. To the right of the bandstand are the public scales. They appear to be a door in the building behind, but are not. This shows the Hartson-Burke block, which was built by Charles Hartson in 1903. It has had many and varied uses since. This card shows more people. The overhanging sign reads dentist. The signs over the left and center doors read C.H. Hartson. The right door sign reads F.H. Whiting, druggist. Many of Greenville's postcards bear the name F.H. Whiting, which attests to the power of advertising. This picture of Main Street, taken after 1937, looks toward the town hall. Note the different cars, the stroller, and the signs. In this picture of the town hall, you can see the sign Chamberlain Free Public Library and the sign Post Office, Greenville, New Hampshire. Note the stop sign in the foreground and the World War I War Monument. This is across from the town hall, looking at High Street and Temple Street. Clearly the picture was taken after an ice storm. Note the fence along the front lawn of the Chickering Adams Eden House and the fence along the mill office. In the square, you can see the water trough, street lamp, fire hydrant, and light poles. Also, you can see the elm tree. This is a slightly different view of the same intersection taken later. The old street lamp has been replaced by a street light, and another telephone pole has been added to the intersection. This picture of the townhouse and telephone office was taken prior to the fire escape being added to the front of the old town hall. Also, note the 2 sets of fences along the sidewalk on the Main Street Bridge. The telephone office was located upstairs in Dr. Hall's building. This picture of the number 1 mill building is taken from the bridge and shows the ice houses on River Street across from the Holden Eaton residence. This card reflects Greenville's ethnic past. The correspondence is in French with some English and is sent to a person with an Irish last name. This picture shows the number 4 mill building before it was lowered. The old Main Street bridge with sidewalks on each side. In the distance, you can see the water trough. If you look closely, you'll see 2 people at the window on the 2nd floor of the mill. East Main Street was the first business district of Mason Village. It wasn't until the 1840s that Main Street from the bridge to the depot was put in. The brick building to the left of the Barrett House was Bourgeois' store, built by George Eliot around 1825 and burned in 1919. This is another picture of East Main Street. Look closely, and we will compare it with the next picture. Do you see any difference between the 2 pictures? There is one difference. If you looked closely, you will note that the second picture is labeled South Main Street. East may not meet west in Greenville, but South Main Street is the same as East Main Street in Greenville, New Hampshire. This picture was taken February 7th, 1907, and it shows the residence of Bronson P. Lamb, later the Martin residence. It was built in 1891. Note the Sacred Heart School and the other buildings in the rear of the picture. Greenville from the Mason Road would be better if it were a clearer picture. This is taken in the vicinity of the Eliot, or later Bully Farm, on what we call today the Old Mason Center Road. About a third of the way in from the right, you can see the number 6 mill building. This picture of a float in a parade is taken in front of the Dodge Pease Newell residence on Main Street. The top of the float reads, "All these young ladies drink fine gold coffee, the most delicious of all coffees." Along the wagon, we see C.S. Bourgeois and more advertising for his store. We saw this picture of the WCTU float earlier in this series. This picture was taken at the intersection of Main and Mill Streets. This Main Street parade picture was also shown earlier. Each building displays some form of patriotic colors or bunting. This picture of the April 19th, 1919 fire of the Bourgeois store and the Congregational Church building shows the magnitude of the fire. The fire started in the small garage between the store and the church. The church was able, during the fire, to remove furnishings, including the pulpit, communion table and silver, hymnals, and the memorial cabinet, which was made from a portion of one of the high-backed pews from the old meeting house in Mason. This picture of the same fire shows men on the roof of the next building. During the fire, many buildings in the neighborhood were either on fire or seriously threatened by the fire. This picture shows the fire ruins of the Congregational Church and Bourgeois' store. It is amazing that the fire was limited to only these 2 buildings. This is a picture of the Eliot or Bourgeois' store after the fire. You can see the fire hose on the ground in the foreground and the usual group of onlookers the day after. 1919 was a bad year for fires, as not only did the church and store burn, but the Chamberlain sawmill, which we saw earlier, burned in 1919 as well. 1919 was also the year of celebration for the armistice of November 11th, 1918. Greenville had a welcome home day to welcome returning servicemen. The Henry J. LeClaire Post of the American Legion was formed in Greenville after the war. It was named for a Greenville native who lost his life in World War I. The Legion continues today as the Leclerc Karen Pelletier Post. This picture is of the dedication of the World War I War Memorial. It was located across from the town hall. This postcard is one of Elsie F. Wheeler at her home on Temple Road. Miss Wheeler was music instructor in the schools in Greenville, New Ipswich, Mason, Mount Vernon, Amherst, and Milford. She also served as organist at the Federated Church. She had a keen appreciation of Greenville's history, and it is from her that I learned much of Greenville's past. This card is of Doris Wheeler. Doris Wheeler served for many years as the correspondent to the local weekly papers. Her columns include articles on Greenville's history. Note the saw rig in the rear of the picture. The upper left-hand side is now Kimball Heights. From left to right are Elsie Wheeler, her father Charles T. Wheeler, and her sister Doris M. Wheeler. This picture is taken in front of the barn at the Wheeler Place on the Temple Road. This picture from Dunster Hill, called here Reservoir Hill because of the reservoir, shows many of the major buildings of Greenville. From left to right, you can see the Baptist Church steeple, the number 6 mill and chimney, the Congregational Church steeple, the number 4 mill and belfry, the public school, the old public school after it was moved to Adams Street, the Sacred Heart Church and school. This bird's eye view from Dunster Hill was a favorite postcard. It is rare to find a collection of Greenville postcards without at least one of these. This collection comes from the Taft family. This is the view from Reservoir Hill with Barrett Hill in the background. This view shows in the foreground the railing at the reservoir on Dunster Hill. Note in the rear of the picture the Jenkins pasture on the Barrett Hill and Mount Watadic to the rear. This is Temple Street. On the left is the Taft, Coffin, Lambert house, the Dodge House, and the former Congregational Church parsonage, now the Blease residence. This is the Taft Coffin house on Temple Street with the addition of a porch. This picture of Main Street is taken from the Hudson-Burke block, and it would appear to be of the beginning of a funeral procession. This picture shows the classic Victorian design of the old town hall. Note the number 6 chimney in the rear of the picture. This is a picture of the number 1 mill and the number 1 mill dam. Note the fence on the left next to the river. This picture shows Main Street with the number 4 mill on the right-hand side. Note the fences. There's a fence along Main Street, a fence along the counting house or mill office building, and then there are the fences on the right-hand side of the picture. This is the number 2 mill. The picture says Greenville, however, it's in Highbridge in New Ipswich. The mills were numbered by the Columbian Manufacturing Company by the date that they built the building or acquired the building, with number 1 being the first in Greenville in 1820, and then the number 2 at Highbridge, number 4 and number 5 here in Greenville, and then number 6 here in Greenville. This is a good postcard view of the Chamberlain Mill. It was for many years referred to as the chair shop because of the manufacture of chairs there. It is now Oil Recovery Systems. This is another picture of South Main Street in Greenville. It is a very common postcard. This is a picture of a mill float. On the left-hand side of the float, it says Northrop Loom, the New Way, 1910. On the right-hand side, it says Hand Loom, the Old Way, 1810. Note the people in the mill building windows to the rear of the picture. Also, many of us will remember the walkway that connected the number 4 mill to the dye house. This is a picture of an inbound train on the railroad bridge. The smoke makes it look as though the train is traveling faster than what it probably was. This is a picture of Main Street during the fire on April 19th, 1919 at the Congregational Church and Bourgeois store. Note the crowd of people, the fire hoses, and ladders that lead to roofs on adjacent buildings. This is another picture of the fire at the Congregational Church. The Congregational Church building was built in 1849 and burned April 19, 1919. This picture shows the fire at Bourgeois' store. You can see how the fire had moved from the store into the roof of the Congregational Church. Also, you can see 2 fire hoses being used in fighting the fire. Also, note the barrels in the foreground. The present bank is located where the store was. These are the fire ruins taken from behind the buildings looking towards Main Street. If you look closely in the picture, you will see people who are looking at the fire ruins. This is the ball field. Note the bleachers on the left, the fence around the schoolyard in the rear, and then the Federated Church steeple. This is a common picture of the High Falls in Muskegon. It doesn't do justice to the High Falls, as it only shows the upper portion of the falls. This is the town hall after the fire in 1935. This is Main Street when there were still elm trees. Note the Chamberlain Taft house in the foreground. Also, the little sign along the street that says, "No parking here." This picture is taken at the corner of Mill and Main Streets. Note the child sitting on the public scales. Also, you can see the bandstand on the right. This is a picture of the railroad station in Greenville with the mill warehouse behind on the right-hand side. To the left is what would appear to be a coal shed. This is a picture of the number 1 mill pond with a boat. From left to right, you will note the number 1 mill building, the corner of the drugstore, the number 4 smokestack and number 4 belfry, the Legion building, and the fire. Greetings from Greenville, New Hampshire. This is another segment in a series of postcard views of Greenville prepared by the Greenville Historical Society. The scene in this card is not from Greenville, but was used only for advertising. This is another of the advertising cards for the town. The series of postcards in this segment are from the collection belonging to Shirley Enright and are supplemented by additional cards from the Historical Society's collection and from cards belonging to Richard Eaton. This is an outbound train over the railroad bridge. The bridge was built in 1851 for the Peterborough and Shirley Railroad. The card reads, Railroad Bridge over Souhegan River, Greenville, New Hampshire, highest bridge in New Hampshire, 626 feet long, 102 feet high. This is looking downstream at the railroad bridge from the east side of the river. It is interesting to note that this card reads, highest bridge in New Hampshire, length 626 feet, height 105 feet, which is 3 feet higher than the previous card. This card shows a passenger train coming into Greenville over the bridge. After the railroad bridge burned in 1907, it was replaced with the steel bridge shown here. This picture is taken from the Wilton Road. The guardrails are in the front of the photo. Note the cleared spot on the steep slope about halfway down the picture on the right side. Many pictures of the bridge were taken from that spot. This is the railroad trestle from the Wilton Road looking north. Note the low clearance. Both the abutment on the right and the pier on the left still stand today. The highway was relocated in the 1950s to the left of the stone pier and further down the slope, allowing trucks to pass beneath without problem. This picture of the railroad bridge is looking from the Wilton Road downstream at the bridge. To the left would be the town. You can barely see the little platform overhangs on the bridge. This shot is taken from the west side of the river of an inbound train. The platform overhangs are much clearer. I'm sure that many of us who walked over the bridge hoped that we would never have to use one. This is a picture of the depot from Main Street. To the left of the depot is the track for the passenger train. Behind the depot is the mill warehouse. This had track on 2 levels. The warehouse was taken down in the 1940s. The garage on the right has also been removed. Note the sidewalk and the elm tree. This is Main Street with the trees. The house with awnings was Chili Sawyer's. The large house next to it was for many years a hotel. This is the Columbian Hotel on Main Street. The sign says W.B. Newell Columbian Hotel. It has since been lowered to 1 story and is known today as Bernier's. This is the Hartson or Burke Block on Main Street, built by Charles Hartson in 1903. It has had many stores and shops in it over the years. The telephone company was on the 2nd floor. Note the hitching posts along the street in front of the building. This is the Hartson or Burke Block from the yard of the Columbian Hotel across the street. The signs above the sidewalk read from left to right, dry goods, groceries, drugstore, clothing, and the wind is from the north-northwest if you can see the flag at the top of the building. This Main Street picture is from the west side of the street looking at what was once Rubshaw's Barbershop. The building to the right burned in 1995. The awning reads LeMay. Note the people on the roof. This is Dr. Hartwell's home on Main Street. Dr. Hartwell was a dentist. Later, the building was used as a Fournier funeral home. The lot on the right hadn't been built on when this picture was taken. You can see a path from Main Street to Temple Street. This is Dr. Hartwell's from another angle with the Hartson or Burke Block to the right. This is a closer view of Dr. Hartwell's. If you look closely, you can see a wagon in the foreground to the left of the phone pole. This picture is said to be of an accident in front of Dr. Hartwell's on Main Street. Note the large number of buildings on the street, and it is apparent that it has drawn a crowd. But if you look closely, you will see that there is a hose running from the fire hydrant across the street, around and in back of the wagon. And I wonder if this were an early fire. This is a 1950s view of Main Street. John Goulian's store is the first building on the left. It was later a Five and Dime, and then the Greenville Hardware. It has since burned. This building was for many years a store. In the picture, the awning reads Louis P. DuPont. The building burned in the 1990s. The card reflects Greenville's Franco-American heritage and reads, "Your friend, Lydia Cretion. I thank you again for the card you sent me." This is another undated picture with members of the fire department marching down Main Street. This picture of Main Street appears to have been taken at the same time as the previous picture. This unusual card shows the number 1 mill building on the left with a sleigh in front, and the picture of the town hall and drugstore on the right. This card is captioned the Oddfellows and Masonic Hall, but is generally known as the drugstore. The IOOF and Masons had a meeting room on the 2nd floor of the building. Dr. Hall was the druggist and had his store on the 1st floor. Note the number 4 mill building on the right and the hitching rails in the center of the picture. This is a picture of East Main Street. The building on the right has since burned. If you note, there is a gas pump just behind the car. This picture is taken just a little bit further up Main Street from the previous one. This card at the town hall was numbered by the writer. Number 1 is the post office, 2 is the library, 3 the Grange, 4 the entrance to the town hall. The card's writer notes that there is now a fire escape and a movie and talkie booth. This shows the town hall in 1923. Note the truck parked next to the Taft's fence. The tradition of parking along the fence continued until the late 1960s or early 1970s. The town hall has always been a good vantage point for watching parades. This card has no indication as to the date. On February 7th, 1935, the town hall burned. This is how it looked the following day. This shows the town hall after the fire. As with most major fires, people have gathered to look at the damage. This is a view of the town hall from Chamberlain Street, taken after the fire. The following year, the town hall was rebuilt in the same location, with much of the main floor being retained. This is the town hall after it was rebuilt in 1936. This is Bourgeois' store on Main Street, where the bank is today. The building was built in 1820. Ovid Lamontagne is on the wagon, and Edward Pelletier is in front. This is the fire at Bourgeois' store on Main Street, April 19th, 1919. The fire started in the garage of this building and spread to the Congregational Church next door. This is after the fire at Bourgeois' store and the Congregational Church. You can see the Baptist Church in the background, and also what many of us refer to as the college. This is another view of Bourgeois' store after the fire with the usual crowd of onlookers. You can see the fire hose in the foreground. This is another view showing smoldering remains of the Congregational Church, and in the background you can see the public school. This is from a different angle and is taken from behind the Congregational Church, looking northwesterly, You can see the L and roof of the Barrett-Cragen house, the burned remains of Bourgeois' store, and it is also possible to see the Catholic Church steeple. This is the ball field with the old grammar school after it was moved from the School Hill to Adams Street. The Jenkins pasture is in the background. The picture of the school is interesting, as it is one of the few in which you are able to see how the rear of the building looked. This is the grammar school after it was moved to Adams Street. The Federated Church steeple can be seen in the background to the left. This is the town hall decorated for the Welcome Home Day celebrations after World War I. In 1919, the town had a Welcome Home parade and celebration for its returning soldiers. This is the town hall decorated for the event. This is a picture of World War I veterans taken in front of the mill office building on Main Street for the Welcome Home Day. Note the picket fences surrounding the building. This is the reviewing platform for the dignitaries for the Welcome Home Day ceremony and dedication of the honor roll. The honor roll is wrapped on the right. This is the honor roll with the Columbia Manufacturing Company's boarding house behind it. The honor roll listed all of Greenville's veterans of World War I, and it is now in the Myrtle Marsh Park across from the Legion. This is not a Greenville scene, but is important to Greenville's history. This is an American Expeditionary Force card from France addressed to Henry Gainey, who was a long-term town clerk, from Private Henry Leclerc. This is the reverse side of the same card. It reads, "Somewhere in France, August 28, 1918. Dear friend, just a word to let you know that I am well and hope that you are the same. I'm far from home, but I don't forget my friends, as I've got the hope of going back. I'm all alone here of the boys that left Greenville. I'm in a good division, so it gives me more courage. I will close my writing with the hope to be with you soon, from Henry Leclerc." Henry Leclerc was the only Greenville serviceman to die in World War I. The Legion post in Greenville was named for Henry Leclerc. This is a picture of a parade float taken on Main Street at its intersection with Dunster Ave. This car was Jesse Cleary's car, decorated for a parade representing Cleary's drugstore. The picture is taken on Pleasant Street next to the cemetery. That is pasture and field behind the vehicles. This is a float in the same parade and is entered by the Fruitdale Grange of Mason. This is another float representing the Columbia Manufacturing Company. Behind it, you can see gravestones in the Pleasant Street Cemetery. The man at the left is Mr. Lacrosse, who drove for the Columbia. This is the Greenville Grange float on Tracy Eaton's truck in a parade. It is taken in front of the Hearst House on Pleasant Street. The sign reads Greenville Grange, POH, or Patrons of Husbandry. This postcard shows two daughters of Zotique Karen. One is possibly Marguerite Cowett. Stay there. This is Leon Parody and a daughter using the Russell's baby carriage. The taller man is Oswald Rodier, and the other may be another Rodier. This is a Rebecca float taken at the top of Pleasant Street. This is the Mason Village Savings Bank float on Bourgeois' truck. The sign reads, "Dimes in the bank make dollars." This is a float representing Bourgeois' store. Hector Bourgeois is on the back. This is the New Hampshire Lawn Rest float. It represents the chair shop near the number 6 bridge. This is marked as a Greenville Parade 1922 of Greenville firemen. You can also note the float behind it is of the New Hampshire Lawn Rest. This is the Oddfellows float. This card says that it is probably Sawyer's float representing the movies. The sign above the vehicle reads, "Welcome to Greenville." This is another parade picture taken at the corner of Main Street and Mill Street. Note the scales with a boy behind them. However, it looks as though he's standing on the scales. Also, you will note in the right-hand corner of the picture is one of Greenville's bandstands. This parade picture shows the Greenville Fire Department with a horse-drawn engine with the firemen behind. This is another parade picture, and it shows the old lady and the shoe, and the sign reads, "The old lady and her children wear Gainey's shoes." Also, on the horse, you will see the sign that reads, "Clothing." This is a religious procession coming down High Street in front of the Mill boarding house. If you look closely, you can see the steam pipe which ran from the number 1 mill to the boarding house. This appears to be another picture of the same procession. This is a great parade picture taken on Main Street in front of the Chamberlain Taft House. Note the porch on the house, but more importantly, note all the costumed characters. Greenville also had solemn processions. This is a picture of Henry Farrah, the undertaker, driving the hearse up High Street. It is said that the house on the right-hand side of the picture slid into the river. It's no longer there, and the sidewalk on that side of the street is also no longer there. This parade picture of the Société Saint Jean Baptiste is taken on Dunster Ave in front of the grain store. The blacksmith's shop is the building behind the marchers. The barn with the cupola is the Dunster Kimball barn on the Temple Road. This is a picture of the Dunster Kimball homestead on the Temple Road. Note the cow on the lawn and the fine detail around the front door. These are 3 unidentified people on the Main Street Bridge with Dr. Hall's drugstore behind them. This picture has no identification whatsoever. It is only marked Greenville, New Hampshire. You can see the belt-driven machinery, but there are few clues as to where it is taken. This is Mr. Citroni after he lost the bet and was wheeled around in a wheelbarrow. The nature of the bet or the occasion have been lost to history. This is the same group of people in front of Mr. Gainey's store in the Hartson block on Main Street. This is the location today, in 1997, of the post office. This picture is taken on Temple Street looking northerly with the Raymond Burgo house in the background. The girls are unidentified. This is taken from the easterly side of Temple Street looking south with the Hartson block and Dr. Hartwell's house in the rear of the picture. This picture is taken from just off of the High Street on Church Hill. You can see the Sacred Heart Church steeple and the number 4 mill tower. The card shows how large the mill pond is. This is the Souhegan River above the dam in Greenville. The picture focuses on the number 1 mill with the town hall behind it. This is the swimming hole on the Souhegan River in Greenville. It is now Riverside Park. In the background, you can see the Mansfield Tenney or Barry Farm in the background, which is actually in New Ipswich. This is a censored picture of children swimming in the river. The man in the back of the picture is said to be Dr. Hall. This is the home of Charles F. Marsh on Dunster Ave. His daughter, Myrtle M. Marsh, was postmistress and treasurer of the Mason Village Savings Bank for many years. She was a benefactress of the town, leaving a cemetery trust fund and the Village Improvement Trust Fund. This is looking northerly down Pleasant Street when it was lined with maple trees. The house on the right is the Livingston Vauden house. This is the Chamberlain sawmill on the Wilton Road. The bridge went over the dam. The mill was built in the 1840s and burned in 1919. The bridge and dam were destroyed in the 1936 flood. The present Green Bridge is just to the north of the mill. This card is captioned Mountains from Reservoir, Greenville, New Hampshire, 16. This is the reservoir on Dunster Hill, looking northwesterly, with Temple Mountain and Packmanadnock in the background. The cleared land in the near background is today orchards off of the Temple Road, located in Greenville. This is Greenville from Barrett Hill. From right to left, you can see the Baptist church steeple, the Congregational Church, which is white, the public school, and it is possible to make out the old grammar school, which was relocated to Adams Street. The arch bridge over the Souhegan was about a quarter-mile below the town line on the Wilton Road. It was a favorite spot to go for a Sunday walk. The bridge was removed in the 1950s when the Wilton Road was relocated. There is no indication where this trout brook is located in Greenville. I would suspect that it might be Richardson Brook, but that is mere speculation. This card is captioned Lover's Lane, Greenville, New Hampshire. It is a well-known spot. Greenville, New Hampshire in the future shows a futuristic view of Main Street in front of the Hartson block, with a subway to New York on the left, streetcar to Fitchburg, Mass. In the center, sightseeing Greenville tour bus on the right, an elevated train to Boston above, and a blimp in the air. This picture of the number 2 mill is a misidentified card, as the number 2 mill is in Highbridge in New Ipswich. It was part of the Columbian Manufacturing Company and thus was often referred to as a part of Greenville. The next cards in this series are from the collection of the Greenville Historical Society. This card is marked Ovilas Lamontagne in front, Ovid Lamontagne Jr. in back, on drawing the frames. This picture is taken in front of the Wheelers' barn on Temple Street. From left to right is Elsie, Charles, and Doris Wheeler. This is a postcard of Doris Wheeler. Note the saw in the background. This picture of Elsie Wheeler shows the barn in the background clearly. This is a postcard of Elsie and Doris Wheeler. You can see the Dunster Kimball barn in the background. This is a picture of Elsie and Doris Wheeler taken around 1919. You can see the Dunster Kimball homestead on Temple Street in the background. This is the Lafreniere house on Mill Street with the Nemi house behind it. This is a picture of the Greenville Grammar School graduation, June 21st, 1912. Pictured are Marion Batchelder, Ruth Batchelder, Aldea Chalone, Bernice Kimball, Eva Lucier, Lily Pelletier, Henry Beauvais, Fernand Canoyer, Earl Porter, Gilbert Wiggins, Margaret Wiggins, and Ruth Tenney. This is a picture of the Martin House on Temple Street shortly after it was built. You can see the Sacred Heart School in the background. This is a classic penny postcard. It's a picture of the Greenville Federated Church taken in 1941, and it's addressed to Miss Maud Rogers, Greenville. At that time, you didn't have to put a street address. Miss Rogers summered at a house on Adams Hill. We hope you have enjoyed these postcard pictures from Greenville.